welcome to Creative Curves, where we talk with creative individuals in various fields about their creative process. I'm your host, Blue Sirens. On today's episode, I speak with Bad at Math. He is a multi-instrumentalist and singer-songwriter turned lo-fi producer. Based in Asheville, North Carolina, he is known for dreamy and neo-soul inspired lo-fi that is centered around electric guitar over layered and lush instruments. Listen in to learn more. Hey man, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's great to have you. I know we've talked a lot back and forth through emails and Instagram messages and threads and stuff. I think this is the first time we've actually heard each other's voice. But thank you, Bad at Math, for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. And it is good to actually talk to you almost in person, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Technology is pretty great, being able to allow us to. I know you're North Carolina. I'm West Coast, so like the time difference and everything, and our jobs and stuff. So I really appreciate the time that you're able to spend with me today, just talking about your creative journey and kind of everything you're doing really right now in music. So I know I've seen you do some recent interviews, but tell us how you got into making lo-fi music.
So around the time of like 2020 lockdowns and stuff, I got super into production. I've been a musician since I was like 10, but I had never really looked into that area of like mixing, mastering, putting it all together myself and actually recording it. I've done demos and that type of thing, but I always in my head I was like, okay, I'm going to give this to somebody else to finish the songs out. And then around 2020, 2021, when me and my wife started working at home a lot, she was looking for some music to listen to while she worked that wasn't like classical. I made her like a jazz playlist. I made her a classical playlist. And then she was just looking for something different. I was like, you should check out lo-fi. Because I'd always kind of been aware of it. And so I sent her to a couple of playlists, and she was like, you could do this. And I was like, maybe I could. And so it was her idea, basically. And that's actually what really got me into recording and production and doing my own mixing and mastering. But up until then, I'd always just been recording demos where I did my own, always tried the live drums, but boy, are they hard to record. That was
Yeah.
my first instrument. I was a drummer. And then as I got older, I got a bass and then I got a guitar so I kind of grew up around it. But what put me there is basically my wife saying, you should probably try this. And make something a little bit different, a little more guitar centric, a little more guitar forward. So that's how I jumped into it.
Yeah, and I think for lo-fi, because we're both lo-fi musicians, there's almost a distinct versions or separations between lo-fi that has guitars and lo-fi that's just piano, and they can kind of go back and forth between they can both be jazz, they can both be
Mhm.
laid back and chill, but I feel like guitar just brings a lot more of dynamics to the music than if
Mhm.
it's just piano, which is really what I do. I don't really do a lot of guitar in my stuff, so I've really enjoyed when we've been able to work together, or when I've listened to your music and been able to hear that extra layer that you add to the music with your guitar. So what was that process kind of you're doing other types of music and then being able to bring all that knowledge into making a new genre in lo-fi for you?
It was a big adjustment actually. If you listen to my first record that I put out, Dark Part, it was 10 tracks that I just put out immediately. If you listen to that, it's more on the boom bappy side. It's a lot less sleepy. There's a few sleepy tracks on there, but so it was an interesting thing to pop into lo-fi and like discover all the tiny niches and the tiny like subgenres that are involved with lo-fi. Because in my head, it was always like dusty boom bap, like it was either that or lo-fi girl, pretty much. And once I got into the scene and like talked with people and started discovering other artists, and like I think Team Astro were probably one of the bigger influences on me as far as like having like a standard band almost. Like they have keys, drums, guitar, bass. And listening to them being like, this is almost like if I just took the songs I was already writing, take the lyrics out, and use drum samples instead of live drums. It's almost like what I was already making. So I kind of tried to look at it that way. And as my career has like moved a little further forward, I've definitely like went more towards the chill hop, the more like
Mm.
chill, sleepy beat stuff. I've never been totally um great at doing sleepy, I don't think, because I get so my music can be so involved and like melodic and which can kind of be distracting if you're trying to, go to sleep. So that's something I'm kind of looking into maybe doing like a sleepy EP so that I can kind of learn that part of the lo-fi scene. But yeah, just jumping into it, trying to take the like indie music that I was making and getting rid of the lyrics and getting rid of my voice and all the harmonies and all that stuff and just trying to turn that into like its own sort of lo-fi genre that's kind of influenced by bedroom pop and like 2000s indie music and stuff.
Man, I feel like that's so ironic that you're like, oh, I need to kind of like chill out on the melodies because
Uh,
for everyone listening, if you didn't know, we did a collaboration together called The Way Home. And my favorite parts of the song are the melodies that you lay in there and the guitar licks. And when we've shared the song with other people and people that have added to playlists have said, yeah, we really like the guitar parts, we love the melodies. So like I'm like, man, for just hearing you now saying like, yeah, I'm trying to change that. I'm like, but that's what people like. But
No,
again,
no,
like
no.
you,
No, I'm not gonna fully like I'm not gonna fully change because I think I have a pretty particular style that sticks out with with the lead guitar melodies. Another thing I do is harmonizing guitars together. I won't leave that. It's mostly just I would like to explore the sleepy slide and get a little bit sleepier for maybe like an EP. I don't mean like change
yeah.
my entire direction. So no, melodies are like for me that's kind of what sets me apart is building a song out almost like a singer-songwriter would with like verses and then like a B section and then a chorus, and I kind of build them out that way. But in the lo-fi genre, a lot of people and one thing I'll tell people that if they get into lo-fi genre is don't worry about what people are looking for. Don't worry about like what playlisters want because a lot of playlisters listen to my music and they're like it's too busy or it's too melodic or this playlist is all sleepy, this playlist is all study beats, so yours might be distracting. At first I kind of took that to heart, but I don't care anymore. I just make like good music and worry about the playlist second.
Yeah, and I think that's you already answered one of the questions I was gonna bring up, but uh I talk about this a lot. I even started talking about on Instagram about some of my favorite parts on it, but this is not a sponsored moment, by the way. But the creative act by Rick Rubin, he has a line in there where he says, like, if you're an artist, you got to make the music for you, and then the audience comes second.
Mhm.
And I think we get so caught up, especially in this day and age with social media and people having instant access to our music, and you've got to really churn music out sometimes to stay relevant that like you're like okay what do people want to hear what does people want to like how are people going to engage with this how am I going to make something that's going to connect with people when really it's like we need to connect with the music ourselves first and then it's going to be successful because if we don't like it why are we going to play it why are we going to write it yeah it's weird but I think you do a really good job of that not just from like what you just said but also you shared recently a song that you did with that has like some Mario inspiration behind it, and the story behind it I think is great. It's touching. But for everyone that's listening, if they didn't catch that song or they didn't catch that Instagram post explaining it, could you tell us a little bit more about that song and the history behind it?
Sure. So over the past like year or so, I've recorded four video game tracks, and so I threw them together in an EP. And the last one I just put out was Dire Docks from Mario 64. I did it with a friend, Jared McIntyre, who's one of the best musicians in North Carolina, and he did the bass lines for me, and they are nuts. It's like hearing Jaco Pastorius or like Victor Wooten pop in on your track. But besides that, yeah, the influence, especially for Dire Docks, was my mom. We talked about this. Like, there's a picture of me like in the fetal position when I got my Nintendo 64 the year it came out, like grabbing it and holding it on the floor because I was like so excited because I came up. I wasn't like poor, but I didn't, we weren't like well off. And so the fact that my mom surprised me with that. So first off, she said, later down the line that she watched me see the commercial when it came on for Mario 64 and she saw the look on my face and she was like, that's it. We have to get this thing. And so she went and at like 2:30 in the morning and sat in line at like Kmart in 1996, I think is when it came out, and 98, one of those two, and waited for it to come out and then surprised me with it. And she all based on the fact that she saw me just like light up when it came on from that commercials. And video games have always been a huge influence for me. I still play them. I'm a big Soulsborne, Dark Souls, Elden Ring guy. But they've always been a huge influence on me. Me and my brother, uh, each year we would ask for like a different system so that we would have one of each. So he would ask for like a Nintendo, and then like 2 years later, I'd ask for a Sega Genesis, and we'd go Super Nintendo. And then if we didn't have one, I would find friends that had one and go make friends with them, you know. So I've always been pretty obsessed with them. But the music, for me, um, I think everybody can agree that music can like transport you to another time. And for me, video game music can make me feel like I'm 8 years old again. And so, one reason why I've been doing some of those tracks is because they're so full of nostalgia. They're great compositions. They're also like amazing songs. But they also like more than any other music, I think they take me back to my childhood and make me feel something that I don't really feel anymore as an adult, like excitement. Just like, you can smell like your old room when you were 10 years old when you hear some of these songs. It's crazy. So that's kind of where that came from. And hopefully I'm planning on doing a volume two. That EP was called Sprites.
Ooh,
And I'm
good
hoping to
name.
do a yeah. I'm hoping to do a volume two next year.
Yeah, man. I think video games, especially like if you grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, like that was like video games becoming more of a household item. You don't have to go to an arcade for it. So you got the ability to connect with those a lot more. And I've done a couple of songs that are more like Pokemon or Game Boy kind of themed because those were like the games that I was like really tied me to, I think, like my childhood.
Mhm.
And so it's really good when you can have like that nostalgia fact and kind of like be like transported out and be like, man, it's a different time. And I guess it kind of makes it feel young and old at the same time because you're like,
Yeah,
wow, this,
especially the ones I'm doing, man, from NES. So,
oh dang, yeah. Like what I think I can't remember, but I think I saw something that it's like, isn't Pokemon like 30,
hmm
35 years old now? And I'm like, man,
hmm yeah,
that's crazy because I still
yeah.
feel like when you listen to when you play the games and like there's some emulators you can now download on phones and play them. So it's crazy how like time works and also like how music works with it. So
hmm
um yeah, that's great, man. Like I think that's a great way to share like the story behind the inspiration for it. And it sounds like unless there's someone else or something else you'd like to kind of share, but it sounds like your mom made a pretty big impact on you on like these things that have inspired you to do music.
Yeah, well, my whole family is musical. My brother plays guitar, several instruments. My dad plays guitar. My granddad played guitar. My great granddad played guitar. So I'm like a fourth generation guitar player, and my mom's a singer. When I was growing up, back when I was in church, we all sang together. And still from time to time, I'm asked to do weddings, and my family is asked to do funerals.
Mm,
So,
wow.
not an ideal thing, but my parents are like for some reason, people land on my parents to sing at funerals, and I have to play guitar now. My dad has arthritis, so I play guitar
Oh,
for him. Um, but yeah, no, and I've been surrounded by it my entire life. All my friends are musicians. I still have four of my best friends are all musicians I grew up playing with, and started, tried starting bands when I was like 12, 13. Actually played shows when I was like 14, I think was my first gig in a bar. And then I just kept playing and played with a bunch of different bands because um, one thing I was not shy about was learning different instruments. So, I played drums with the band, I played guitar with a band, I played mandolin with a bluegrass band when I was in college. Bluegrass was a big
yeah.
thing for me growing up. So, it's always been around for me.
Wow, that's great. So what's next for you then? I know you've got you got some great things with sprites, maybe a volume two coming out. We did a collab recently where, spoiler alert, but we're gonna be working on another one soon. And every time I feel like I see you on social media, it's like, hey, did you know I just released a new song? So like, I feel like you turn them out pretty quickly, and like, I don't think that's hard for you because you've been doing music for so long, and like you've got the skills for creating, and you've developed the skills of production the last couple of years. So what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I try to release bare minimum. I try to release a track every month under Bad at Math. I just finished the Sprite EP. I just finished an EP with Bootleg Boy called All That I've Seen. That just came out, and I'm really proud of that one. That one is also like a nostalgia driven record. But yeah, we're working on a collab together. I've got a couple of other collabs with some new guys coming in. I like to basically if it's a lo-fi producer that has a small amount of listeners and they're decent at as musicians, I'll say yes because I think the reason why I stuck with it is because I had this community that supported me, and I had guys like Will Hatton who pushed me forward, and several people in the community who've been supporting me the whole time. So, I don't want to. I'll never turn somebody down because they don't have a huge listener base. I'll only turn it down if it's like not up to standard as far as the music is concerned. But as far as on the horizon, I'm hoping to work again on a Sleepy EP is kind of like the next thing I want to try, just because for me it's like uh it's a change, and it's something that maybe will bring out like a little more creativity as far as like being a little more piano driven, a little more atmosphere driven. So I'm working on something like that. I'm working on an album to release as Caleb Paul Humphreys, myself with lyrics and singing and all that stuff. So it's going to be kind of a bedroom pop inspired record, and that's on the horizon. But that will take a whole lot more of my time. So that probably won't even be this year when that comes out. So that's kind of where um, I'm working on things right now, and really want to get into doing more collabs. I really, working with you, I really had a great time doing that. Just did a couple of collabs with Nesson, and that was great. So that's kind of where I want to start spending more time is working with other artists in the community.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm in the same boat. When this year started, I was wanting to do, I think my goal was to do maybe like five or six collabs, or at least five or six collabs throughout the year. And collaborations are interesting because you don't really, it's tough sometimes to set like a timetable of like, hey, I want to get this finished and released, because you got to work with someone else's schedule. And we've both been in bands, and I think it's similar but still not the same, because when you're in a band you come together to practice and you can see
Mhm.
so the song get created. But when
Mhm.
you're doing a collaboration, sometimes it's like, hey, I haven't heard from you in like 2 weeks, what's going on? And then they send you like the song and it's completely done. You're just like, oh, I just didn't know. So it's a different dynamic, but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed ours. If you haven't done a collab with Bad at Math, I'll tell you what to expect. Great communication, great vision of like, hey, what do you want? What do I want? And the guitars are going to sound great as well too. So great plug.
Hit me up.
Yeah, which by the way, where can we hit you up at? Where can we connect with you, find your music, and see about doing a collab with you?
Music is on all streaming platforms, all the basics, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, so forth and so on. I am on Instagram and TikTok and Threads. I don't really mess with Twitter very much anymore. I'm on SoundCloud, but all of those you can find me at it's bad at math period Lofi is my username.
Awesome. And hey, don't worry if you didn't catch all those or it's like, hey, that was a lot. It's all in the description below. So you can check out those links and connect with him, find out if he's down to do a collab with you and listen to his music. So, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm sure we could talk for another hour or two. We talked a little bit before we started recording, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy guy. So thanks so much for coming on, and we can't wait to hear the next song that you'll have coming out.
Thanks for having me, man.
Ain't no problem. Thank you for listening to the Creative Curves podcast. I hope you've been inspired by this episode to try something new in your own creative process. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Blue Sirens Music for weekly Creative Curves podcast episodes. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks for listening.